Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7 with me, Gordon Ross, and in the studio this evening, Chris McCusker, a regular contributor from the SNP. Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you very much, Gordon. Nice to be here.
Well, straight down to business, Chris. Tonight we have Ian Blackford from the SNP demanding that Boris Johnson reconvenes the ISC and publishes the Russia report. The SNP's Westminster leader has demanded that the UK government immediately reconvenes a meeting of the Intelligence and Security Committee, the ISC, and publishes the suppressed report on Russian interference in UK democracy. In a letter to Boris Johnson, Mr Blackford criticised the Tory leader for repeatedly and intentionally failing to take steps to establish the committee and for dodging scrutiny on vital issues, adding that the publication date for the Russia report had been kicked into the long grass. Previously, UK government ministers falsely claimed that the ISC must first appoint a chairman before its findings can be released. However, the SNP's Shadow Secretary for Defence, Stuart MacDonald, explained that the committee is covered by a statute by both the House of Commons and the House of Lords. It therefore does not need to be held up to select committee elections. Mr Blackford MP, the SNP's Westminster leader, has said Boris Johnson repeated refusal to publish the key report into Russian interference in UK democracy and his intentional delay in convening the Intelligence and Security Committee is nothing short of an abdication of duty as Prime Minister and a clear attempt at ducking scrutiny. Well, Chris, what do you think of this story so far?
It's just an ongoing theme that Boris doesn't want this to come out because the wider implications could be rippling across the pond, shall we say.
So you think that there's perhaps a connection with Mr Trump buried in this suppressed report?
Just a small, tenuous one.
You think so? Well, I'll carry on with the rest of this report. We'll see where it leads us, Chris. But while the content of the report will no doubt be of importance, it is Johnson's disdain for democracy and the sidelining of Parliament on key issues that brings into question his conduct. It is unacceptable that Johnson has intentionally failed to take steps to establish the Intelligence and Security Committee. The decision to kick the publication of a key report into Russian interference into the long grass is disgraceful, and it's clear that it has been delayed without justification by Downing Street. My message to Boris Johnson is clear and will be unrelenting. End the suppression and lift the sanction on publishing the report and re-establish the Intelligence and Security Committee so that it can meet at the earliest opportunity. Now, the Intelligence and Security Committee is a cross-party committee, I believe.
Yeah.
So you would have expected it to be largely neutral in this case? You
would expect it to be so, yeah. And Stuart MacDonald made the salient point that it has been covered in statute, so therefore it doesn't need to wait for any other chairman.
Yeah, so they don't need to appoint a chairman.
You know, so the delaying tactics are just, quite stark actually, because they obviously don't want this to come out at all.
Do you think it would throw into doubt the entire validity of the election result?
It would throw into doubt the actual Tory majority. But I don't think it would change much.
You don't think it would change the result of the vote?
Well,
do you think the influence affected people's votes or their choices?
Yeah. The only thing that could come out of it is the fact that someone could possibly, Joanna, could possibly mount some sort of legal precedent over it. But if you have to remember that all those Tory MPs that were elected in this majority, they all signed a sort of like a bond of trust with Johnson.
Yeah,
they're all, you know, like champing at the bit for Brexit routine. And
But the effect of this this report actually deals with the Brexit referendum as
Yeah.
well, doesn't it? It's not it and other issues arising from it.
yes, but that's why I say that it could possibly lead to someone mounting some sort of legal case.
Saying that the Brexit vote was not legally obtained.
Yeah. You couldn't get, for argument's sake, you couldn't get the Labour front bench trying to put in a vote of no confidence on the back of.
And of course, there's only 10 or 11 days left before Brexit occurs.
Yeah.
In which case, if this report is stalled for another 10 or 11 days, then it
Which-
will be a moot point. It
Yes,
will be
but
too late.
that's exactly what. You know, I mean, all credit to Ian Blackford for raising the issue, but Boris Johnson will not let it out, and you know, in those 10 and 11 days. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, he's got the blinkers on and he's hell for leather for the 31st of January, and then he's got carte blanche to do what he wants.
Well, of course, Broadcasting Scotland itself raised the issue of this this report into Russian interference before the election recently as well.
Yeah.
And we had an interview with Nicola Sturgeon actually dealing exactly with this very same issue. But now the time is ticking away, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's you know, exactly what I was saying is the fact that Boris Johnson, I personally believe, will try and keep on kicking it into the long grass and stalling it up until the 31st of January, and then you may get a date a couple of months later on down the line of when this committee is going to come together.
Okay. Well, apparently he's already said this, that he's not going to, you know, open this can of worms until well after Brexit, presumably.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Chris, I'd like to move on, and unfortunately we're still talking about Brexit here. This is the issue of European citizens who are vital to Scotland. EU citizens living and working in Scotland make an invaluable contribution to our society, our culture and economy, the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon will say today. At an event in Edinburgh to celebrate the positive impact of EU citizens, the First Minister has announced additional funding for the Stay in Scotland campaign. The campaign has so far awarded more than £570,000 to provide practical advice, support and information to EU citizens. The Citizens Advice Scotland will now receive an extra £10,000 to expand legal support services for those with more complicated cases applying to the EU settlement scheme. In addition, Just Right Scotland, a legal centre for justice and human rights, will get £7,000 to develop guidance for EU citizens, explaining their rights to vote and access to healthcare, education, housing and benefits. While Scotland's population is at a record high of 5.4 million, the increase is solely down to immigration. All of Scotland's population growth for the next 25 years is projected to come from migration, in contrast to the rest of the UK. Now, this is an interesting point, isn't it, Chris? That Scotland, unusually in the UK, needs immigration.
Yeah, well, Alison Thewlis was making this point earlier on when she was replying on behalf of the SNP in yet another further debate of the Queen's speech. You know, she was hammering home the point that there needs to be greater clarity in the government's position of the whole immigration issue.
Yeah.
Because it is not going to be beneficial to Scotland to operate on an Australian points system. You know, it's just not going to work out for us.
Well, simply because the kind of people who are required in Scotland don't necessarily have these high-level skills. Sometimes we need people who can deal with sheep or pick fruit or other tasks which require human beings.
You know, I mean, I think you'll be hard placed to find a guy that's qualified deer stalking out in Queensland or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Well, the thing is that, I was going to say that this points-based system might work in England, but is it going to work in Scotland in any way?
This is exactly what I'm saying, is that, you know, there are many nuanced careers in Scotland, as you say. You know, I mean, it's not everybody that can build a dry stone dike.
Yeah, or fish
You
for
know,
lobsters or whatever else is done.
or cut peat.
Yeah.
You know, an awful lot of
wooden
people
boats.
don't know how to cut peat. You know, and it's something that needs to be taught. It's you know, in Scotland we have quite an awful lot of old work skills that have to be preserved and adapted for our new, century going forward.
Do you think, Chris, that this points-based system that they've talked about is just simply pandering to the racists in the South East?
It's exactly what Nigel
anywhere.
Farage was asking for.
Uh-huh.
If you remember Farage and all his grandiose speeches,
Yeah.
he always advocated for an Australian points-based system.
And if I remember correctly, Australia's run by quite a far-right government as well, is it
Correct.
not?
Yes, it is.
And
It is.
look at how things have panned out over there with their fire disaster and their climate change deniers as well.
One could say that their Prime Minister has not dealt with that situation in the best way possible. And, you know, it can be argued the fact that it's a man-made disaster and therefore they should have contingency plans in place for it. But to bringing it back over to Britain, as a points-based system, as you say, it might work for England. Is it going to work for Northern Ireland?
But
Is it going to work for Wales?
There was also this issue, Chris, fairly recently of immigrants who come to Scotland, lived here for perhaps, quarter of a century, built up businesses here, and then being thrown out because they're not earning £35,000 a year.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, this whole cut-off, again, the SNP have constantly tried to get this lowered, you know, because your actual sort of like average median earnings in Scotland
it's about 22,000.
Is about 22,000, you know, but, you know, for that same job, you might be able to command 35,000 down in London or something like that.
But not here.
But not here, no.
Well, listen, I'll move on with the story, Chris. The First Minister has said that we're stepping up efforts throughout EU citizens and their families through our Stay in Scotland campaign. And since the EU referendum, EU citizens have been forced to live with unacceptable levels of uncertainty as to how Brexit will affect their lives, their careers and their families. So, I mean, this is a big problem for all Europeans living here at the moment.
It's something that I said earlier on. This should have been nailed at the first outset of Brexit.
Yeah.
You know. I mean, 3 years ago,
When you say nailed, do you mean
should have been hammered out, and it should have been made clear as mud as the fact that Scotland didn't vote for it, and
we want a different system.
And we want a different system.
But of course, they're now saying we're being forced into this one-size-fits-all, aren't we?
Well, yeah, because it's this one-nation conservatism that we're all living under now.
Okay. Well, listen, we're going to move at relatively high speed away from Brexit now and into something else which is supposed to move at high speed, which is the UK high-speed rail project, which appears to be almost hitting the buffers already, where the costs apparently could soar to as much as £106 billion. A remarkable amount of money, I think you'll agree. HS2, the proposed high-speed rail project running between London and Northern England, could cost up to £106 billion, 25% more than recently predicted, an official review seen by the Financial Times says. The report said that there was considerable risk that the high-speed 2 project's price could jump from £88 billion budget that was set by the government as recently as September. The Financial Times said that the review also recommended that work on the second phase of the project, stretching from central England to northern towns such as Manchester, should be paused to determine whether a mix of conventional and high-speed lines could be used instead. Now, this sounds very much like they're distilling this. Let's carry on and see where this leads. The review could make difficult reading for Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government, which won a sweeping mandate in December with the help of many northern towns that had rarely voted for his Conservative Party in the past. Envisaged as the backbone of Britain's national transport network, the 345 miles of new high-speed track is designed to slash journey times with the type of rail service that is already enjoyed by other major countries. However, it has faced criticism over the costs, with opponents saying that it would be cheaper and faster to spend money on boosting existing services on conventional lines. Now, Johnson has vowed to increase investment in major infrastructure outside the capital. And last week, his government stepped in to help rescue the regional airline Flybe, something else which caused a great deal of outcry. The Financial Times said that the HS2 review, led by former chairman of HS2 Doug Okervie, recommended that the first part of the project between London and Birmingham should be, on balance, should go ahead. Further work is needed to assess the impact on regional growth, and it's hard to say what economic benefits will result from building it, the report said. Transport Minister Grant Shapps told Sky News that he had received the report and the government would make the final decision in a matter of weeks. So, Chris, another one of Boris's enormous pre-election promises appears to be unravelling already.
Yeah, and the biggest point is, well, quite a few big points to come out of that. The first one being is the fact that it's now possibly double the original projected cost.
Yep, I think it was 81 billion
no,
originally. Was it lower than that?
It was 56 million when it was first mooted.
Billion, I think.
Billion. Sorry,
Sorry,
I do apologise.
It's all right.
Then it went up to 80 odd as last September. Now we're talking double.
Yeah, I guess so.
Double. Yeah. So, you know, make no mistake, folks, this is double, and it is of no benefit to Scotland whatsoever.
And we're paying, what, 10% of the cost of this?
10% of the cost of this.
It does remind me a little bit of both the Edinburgh trams and the Scottish Parliament building, because it's another one of these massive infrastructure projects which is being designed by bureaucrats who keep changing the things they want it to do.
Yeah. But the other thing as well is that there is talk that it will now stop at Birmingham and go no further.
And not even get to Manchester or Leeds.
Not get to Manchester or Leeds. So therefore, how does that work for these northern towns?
Well, they're going to have to rename it the Midlands Powerhouse.
The Midlands Powerhouse. But then how does that work for these former Labour towns that voted Tory
to see this,
in order to see this project go through? It's absolutely bizarre. The last point on that piece there was that it will take another couple of weeks for the final government say on it.
Yeah, this is what Grant
Shapps was saying. So that's another couple of weeks. You know,
we'll be into
another
Brexit
one that will be after January.
What do you know? There'll be a very good excuse probably
21st.
for not doing it.
Yeah.
You think they're just going to kick it down the road a bit further?
They will cite various issues and extend the ground working time and stuff like that and elongate it. This will, I fully expect this to burgeon on to about 200 billion.
And you think perhaps that
the
whole project might eventually collapse under the weight of its own cost?
They won't drop it, but Boris Johnson won't drop it. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? You have to look at his track record in vanity projects.
He seems to be very good at kicking the can long way down the road. I mean, there should be an award for the man who can kick a can the furthest.
He's got bigger boots than Theresa May.
He may well be out of office by the time this becomes an issue.
Yeah, or even before it becomes a reality.
Well, speaking of being out of a job and out of office, it takes us to our next story. There's a nice little segue there. Tony Hall is apparently to step down as the BBC's Director General. Tony Hall is standing down as the Director General of the BBC after 7 years in the role. Lord Hall of Birkenhead, who was parachuted in to rehabilitate the corporation after the Jimmy Savile scandal, said that the BBC needed a new leader before its negotiations with the government over the future of the licence fee and the renewal of its royal charter. Hall will take over as chair of the National Gallery. The post has been vacant since last September, when Hannah Rothschild stepped down. "It's been such a hard decision for me," he wrote in an email to staff on Monday. "I love the BBC. If I followed my heart, I would genuinely never want to leave." Hall said that he would continue to work flat out to demonstrate why public service broadcasting with the BBC at its heart is an eternal idea. Hall will stand down in the summer, giving his successor time in the role ahead of the mid-term review of the BBC's charter in 2022. The Prime Minister has issued thinly veiled threats about potentially abolishing the licence fee and decriminalising non-payment of the £154.50 annual fee, something which many Scots are already not paying, it would seem, according to some of the social media I've read.
But again, I would highly doubt that Boris Johnson would do that.
You think this is just noise?
It's just more white noise.
No?
Yeah, definitely.
You not think the Tories are determined to break up the BBC and turn profits?
Why would they? Why would they want to turn up their own propaganda machine that works for them?
Well, one of the reasons, if we come to the next part of the story, Chris, hopefully this will become apparent. The Culture Secretary, Nicky Morgan, also said that she's open-minded about replacing the licence fee with a Netflix-style subscription service. Some insiders thought Hall might stay in place until the BBC's centenary in 2022. However, he has decided to give his successor enough time to lead talks with the government over the mid-term review. Mr. Hall said, "The BBC has an 11-year charter. Our mission is to secure until 2027. But we also have a mid-term review process for the spring of 2022. Referring to his speech at the BBC's Welsh headquarters in Cardiff last week, he said, "As I said last week, we have to develop our ideas for both, and it must be right that the BBC has one person to lead it through both stages. Over the next 6 months, my priority, as always, will be to champion this great organisation and continue to direct our reinvention. There is so much more we can do to transform the creative industries around the UK still further and to project this country's talent and ideas to the world." This is something which I think would come as a very thin gruel when it comes to the Scottish media and arts here. We get very little of this licence fee.
I was just about to say, does that mean further dumbing down of the resources for BBC Scotland Shire and the actual production unit within it? You know, as we've come to know, that the money has been very, very sparse when coming from England back up. You know, for all those gullible people who do pay a BBC television
Well, I believe only a
licence.
third of the licence fee paid in Scotland is actually spent on production here.
Yeah, and it's a model that's replicated in Northern Ireland, and it's also replicated in Wales. And the majority of the money gets spent on England.
The other problem, as far as I understand it from having spoken to some people in the industry here in Scotland, is that if you want to get any programming made in Scotland, it has to be commissioned through the BBC in London.
Got to go down to London first.
Even some STV programming has to be commissioned by apparently BBC
by the
commissioning
BBC.
editors. Yeah. So it's remarkably restricted here.
Yeah.
Not STV, I beg your pardon, but independent
ITV.
production, movies and dramas and things like that. Anyway, Mr. Hall said that he felt that he was leaving the BBC in a much stronger place than when I joined. Okay, so he obviously feels that he's done a good job, Chris, but has he really?
Well, no, he has basically caricated the BBC service from.
He's nursed it through.
There's an even better word than caricated. I don't know where I got that from, but basically, yeah, it's a baby that's been sort of like passed on, to people who have been seen as a safe pair of hands. I have a suggestion for who could take over. Yeah, I hear Harry's looking for a job.
Well, Chris, there's one thing that was said apparently today, which was that Hall thought that the BBC should be there on the Andrew Marr show, was there to support the government. This is what he actually said.
That's what I said earlier on, is the fact that why would they want to break up the Tory propaganda machine?
Well, he's actually almost exactly said that in not quite so many words.
Yeah. The BBC has been the Tory mouthpiece since, you know, the days of Thatcher.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's why it leaves a very, very bad taste in a lot of Scottish households, you know, the length and breadth of the country. You know, and people of an independence persuasion have grown to see what the BBC actually is capable of.
Yep.
If you were to watch,
I think we're talking about its news and current affairs output here, rather than its drama and comedy.
Well,
although maybe not
even
so much.
that. You know, I mean, it gets to the point where, you know, you get sick of the fact that we have football matches at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. Mm-hmm. You know, Celtic and Rangers are playing at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, right? Just for argument's sake. And Liverpool and Chelsea are playing at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Their highlights get shown on a Saturday night all across the country.
Yeah.
And yet we've got to wait until Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's been a problem.
You know, I mean,
Scottish.
Come on, what's the script there?
Yeah, and there's the famous words, you know, people in Scotland have their own programmes, which I always remember from my childhood on missing out on a programme I really wanted to see because it wasn't transmitted here, or if it was.
Yeah.
And of course, we don't really have our own programmes anymore to even replace them with.
Well, you know, I mean, this is and the point that I was wanting to make was back in the heyday of EastEnders. It was reported that they spent more on the EastEnders budget than what they gave to Scotland.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Do you know what I mean? That was that was a reportable comment. You know, in the days of Grant Mitchell and Dirty Den and
I think
somebody being shot by a daffodil.
They were comparing it also to River City as well, because one EastEnders episode allegedly was equivalent in costs to an entire season of River City.
Yeah, I can quite believe that. Yeah.
And I think the same thing has been said over television coverage of football in Scotland, that there is only about 10% of the money in Scottish football from television and media coverage and advertising and so on.
Yeah. And also the fact that an awful lot of Scottish football has unfortunately keeled over and it has taken the Judas money for BT and Premier Sports and all the rest of it, because unfortunately Scottish clubs need money. Well,
listen, we'll need to move on, Chris. We've got a lot to get through tonight. Our next item is actually about Scotland's exports. Efforts are being stepped up to help Scottish companies increase their exports following Brexit. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, told business leaders and trade experts that it was more important than ever for Scotland to strengthen its ties with other nations. In a keynote speech at the CBI's International Trade Conference in Edinburgh, the First Minister detailed initiatives being taken to help meet the Scottish Government's 10-year target for increasing exports from 20% to 25% of Scotland's GDP. And these include expanding the global Scot network of people making contacts and identifying opportunities in international markets from 600 to 2,000, including doubling the number in Europe from 250 to 500 by the end of 2020. By the end of March 2020, the Scottish Development International will have in place a further 12 specialists focusing on international markets that offer the greatest opportunities for export growth. And they're continuing to expand the FM Export Challenge programme by arranging 40 new mentorships under which existing exporters advise other businesses by April 2020. An SDI trade specialist has been allocated to each one of about 1,200 companies identified as being key to achieving the Scottish Government's export target. The First Minister said Brexit threatens to be hugely damaging to Scotland's economy and presents a particular challenge to exporters as we are taken out of the world's biggest single market. which is around 8 times bigger than the UK market. Short of continued EU or single market membership, the Scottish Government is continuing to argue for close alignment with the EU, as that would provide the best access to European markets, but we cannot predict what will happen. Now, I seem to remember that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Sajid Javid, made some comments yesterday about not remaining, or was it Saturday, I beg your pardon? Saturday, about not remaining in the single market or the currency union. Customs union, I beg your pardon. So where does that leave Scotland?
Well, I honestly, I don't see where it leaves Scotland, because as much as we have to welcome the First Minister's work that she's doing here to project Scotland's exports, I think we're going to be stagnated if, obviously, if we're not independent by this time. But I think we're going to be stagnated by this Brexit calamity that is going to take years and years and years to unravel. It's not going to happen overnight.
It's going to be a slow death.
1st of February, it's not going to be, right, we can do what we want.
Yeah.
As you say, it's going to be a slow death, and it's going. What I can see in my own head at this moment in time, and I may be wrong, but what the English government, because I'm right to correct myself, right? The English government will want to start with its own exports to Scotland, and then it will move its exports to Northern Ireland. Then it will move its exports, and they'll start from there and try and project themselves as we're
exporting everywhere.
Starting with their own country.
So you think they're just going to massage the statistics to make it look healthier?
Well, was that not what we were talking about earlier on at the start of the show, of just hiding all the facts and figures and just making out that everything in the garden's rosy?
Yeah, and selectively quoting statistics that look reasonably good.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to move to our next story, Chris, to rattle through them tonight. The Tory leadership candidate, Michelle Ballantyne, is threatening to move away from free higher education. The SNP has called on the Tory leadership candidates to come forward with a clear, concrete statement on tuition fees, after Michelle Ballantyne claimed that she was working on an alternative to free university education. Launching her campaign to become the next Tory leader in Holyrood, Ballantyne hinted to journalists that she would end the SNP's policy of free education in Scotland, with students in England burdened with an average debt of over £50,000 thanks to tuition fees. Last year it was reported that Tory MSPs were split on the issue, with a group of parliamentarians calling for a historic U-turn on the party's policy to charge students thousands in fees. Michelle Ballantyne has previously suggested that she would back NHS privatisation and that people on benefits cannot have as many children as they like, and claimed that there is no such thing as a bedroom tax. Commenting, a former teacher, Jenny Gilruth MSP, said, "Education must always be a right and not a privilege to those who can afford it. The SNP is the only party that has not just promised free higher education but delivered it. Under the SNP's watch, record numbers of Scots are being accepted to study at university, with the number of students from our most deprived communities at a historic level too." Michelle Ballantyne and Jackson Carlaw are playing to the gallery, trying to outdo one another in a bid to prove their right-wing credentials to their boss in Westminster, Boris Johnson. It's quite simple. The alternative to free education is toxic tuition fees. Well, what do you think, Chris? Is there any chance that Michelle Ballantyne would convert anybody in Scotland to vote for her with this policy?
Well, she won't have any difficulty in converting the Tory faithful. But as converting anyone else, I mean, even the lacklustre Lib Dems wouldn't even go for this, to be honest with you. No, I honestly, no. I mean, Willie Rennie, it's not often that you'll hear me give credit to Willie Rennie. Do you know what I mean?
My goodness, giving credit to Willie Rennie. What's
But
wrong with you, Chris?
But he does like his free tuition. Do you know what I mean?
Well, maybe he benefited
Although
from it
it's-
himself.
Yes, I know, but
Like
although
many
he
other
constantly
politicians.
points out the fact that education in Scotland is woeful.
Yeah. Yes.
So I mean, let's not put Willie too highly on the
It's
pedestal
woeful
there.
but free.
Woeful but free, yes, aye, and he'll take as much of it as he can get. But it's just Ballantyne and Carlo playing to the audience, trying to. Well, I mean,
Look
Carlo,
how right-wing we are.
Carlo doesn't. See, to be honest with you, both of them, Carlo and Ballantyne, don't need to prove how right-wing they are.
We already know that
You know,
from what they've said
Scotland,
in the past.
Scotland knows it already. And you just need to take the couple of comments that Ballantyne's come out with in the past, and a couple of them she's been forced to actually explain in
detail,
Holyrood
yeah.
Parliament in detail, as you say.
Well, it'll be interesting to hear their answers to that if they ever come. I'd like to stay, if we would, Chris, with education for this next item. Carol Monaghan MP has challenged the Tories to come clean over Erasmus. Now, Erasmus is the inter-university organisation which allows students from Scotland to study in Europe, isn't it?
And also European students to come over here.
To come over here. Now, the SNP's Carol Monaghan MP today challenged the Tories to come clean over whether the UK will continue to participate in the Erasmus programme, asking if it is the Education Secretary or the Prime Minister that is correct on the issue. Last week, at Prime Minister's questions, Boris Johnson said Brexit would not pose a threat to the UK continuing to participate in the Erasmus scheme. However, Education Secretary Gavin Williams today confirmed that his question was yet to be decided and would be subject to further negotiations with the EU. In commenting, the SNP's Shadow Secretary for Education, Carol Monaghan, has said it's now been over 3 years since the EU referendum and the Tories still cannot tell us whether Scottish and UK students will be able to continue to benefit from the hugely successful Erasmus programme. The Prime Minister and the Education Secretary are not even on the same page. Well, is that a surprise, Chris, that
No,
Boris
it's
isn't
not.
on the same page as one of his ministers?
But again, this is something else that is just going to, it's not going to be resolved before the 31st of January. It pays more to the fact that Boris Johnson is flying by the seat of his pants.
And you think he's just ignoring these issues and hoping that they will just go away?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, he thinks that all these issues can be wrapped up in one neat bundle if he manages to get his Canada plus.
Do you think he's actually trying to include all of these items in his negotiations?
Yeah. I mean,
And this is why he's not resolving them right now.
I fully expect him to, take everything lock, stock, and barrel and say to whoever, because who have we got? Oh yeah. The Americans. So
Only the Americans.
Only the Americans. Yeah. So basically, he can say everything that we had with the EU, we want to have with you, and therefore we don't need to dissect it because you just need to look back at what we've had for the last 40 years. So just give us it all, and we'll gladly take it. Bow, meek.
So you think that he's going to wrap everything up in a bow and just hand it to America and say that this is what we want to let you privatise and pick what you want out of all of this?
Yeah.
So a sort of bring and buy sale of the UK's crown jewels.
Bring and buy sale, yeah.
Or a garage sale. Somebody pointed out.
Garage sale, jumbo sale, call it what you like. House clearance.
Say it's more like a fire sale.
Fire sale. But the point that I was wanting to make on this actual issue is that education has devolved to the Scottish Government.
Yeah, this was a point that you made to me earlier on this evening before we came on air, and I wanted you to explain this to the audience
Well, I
tonight.
want to expand on it a wee
Okay.
bit. Education is wholly devolved to the Scottish Government. The English Government has got no say in Scottish education whatsoever.
I think everybody would understand it.
Apart from carping from the sidelines because it's so woefully bad,
and
apparently,
free.
and completely free. Therefore, can John Swinney not make representations direct to the EU to point this fact out, as the fact that Scotland's education system is devolved.
Has nothing to do with Brexit.
The Scottish Government own it. It's got nothing to do with Brexit. So the exchange of students should be able to continue.
Yeah, these are not business transactions we're talking about. These are students' lives and their education.
Yeah, correct.
I think that's a very, very valid point, and probably one which
only John Swinney can answer.
Well, John Swinney's the only man who can answer this, and perhaps we might hear from him after the programme tonight if he watches this show.
It would be really good because, again, I think I made the point to you earlier on, Gordon, in an earlier show. My son, who's studying in Aberdeen, studying politics, he's due to finish his studies this year.
Yep.
His Polish girlfriend, however, was doing a 5-year teacher course. She's cut that short by 1 year because of Brexit.
Because she's worried about being able to stay to finish her course.
Now, if the Erasmus programme was still available, then she would be able to go back over to Europe. Should I say, she would be able to stay here, and my son would be able to go over to Europe and do a postgrad.
Yeah. Of course, we're looking at this purely through the Scottish lens, Chris, and has the European Union, I mean, what I'm trying to find out is which organisation in Europe is responsible for Erasmus? Is it the group of universities, or is it a political collective of countries that are part of the EU? This is the problem.
I would suggest it has to be something the same as, just say for argument's sake, the CFP, right? You know, the CFP is an overarching body that looks after all the fish stocks. So I would presume that there would be some sort of body which looks after all the educational stocks, and that stretches from Berlin to Shetland.
Well, I'm being told, Chris, from the Shine Booth, that Erasmus is conducted at state level. In other words, they will only recognise an independent sovereign state's government when it comes to talking about Erasmus. And this might be the problem. Where we could participate if we were recognised as a country.
Well, then it's up to the EU to recognise Scotland as a country.
And this is the catch-22 we find ourselves in after Brexit, is it not?
Because I'll make another salient point as well. If we just pop back to media for just a wee second here, John Nicholson, the Secretary for Digital Media and Culture, was on the Jeremy Vine show the other day there.
Yes.
And I was wanting to share it, but I was prevented from doing so because YouTube said this content is not available in your country.
Interesting.
They didn't say region. So at least we've got to be quite happy the fact that YouTube recognised Scotland as a country, or Channel 5 did.
Even accidentally. Well, okay. Listen, we have to move across the globe now for our next story, talking of countries. And this is a very worrying development in China. There has been an outbreak of a new coronavirus which has spread to more Chinese cities, including the capital, Beijing, and Shanghai. The national and local authorities have confirmed on Monday. And a fourth case has been reported beyond Chinese borders. President Xi Jinping has said that curbing the outbreak and saving lives was a top priority, as the number of patients has more than tripled and a third person has died. Now, I understand, Chris, that this virus is a breathing problem. So, adding to the difficulties of containing this virus, hundreds of millions of Chinese will be travelling domestically and abroad during the Lunar New Year holiday that starts this week. Authorities around the globe, including the United States and many Asian countries, have stepped up screening of travellers from Wuhan, the central city where the virus was first discovered. Wuhan is a major hub, and with travel being a huge part of the fast-approaching Chinese New Year, the concern level must remain high. There is more to come from this outbreak, warned Jeremy Farrar, a specialist in infectious diseases, epidemics, and the director of the Wellcome Trust global health charity. This outbreak is extremely concerning. Uncertainty and gaps remain, but now it is clear that there is person-to-person transmission, Farrar said. The authorities have confirmed a total of 217 new cases of the virus in China as of 6 p.m. local time, 10 o'clock GMT on Monday. The state television has reported 198 of which were in Wuhan. 5 new cases were confirmed in Beijing and 14 more in Guangdong province, the report said. Another statement confirmed a new case in Shanghai, bringing the number of known cases to 222 worldwide. People's lives and health should be given top priority, and the spread of the outbreak should be resolutely curbed, President Xi has been quoted as saying in state television. The virus belongs to the same family of coronaviruses as the severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS virus, which killed nearly 800 people globally during a 2002-03 outbreak, which also started in China. Its symptoms included fever and difficulty breathing, which are similar to many other respiratory diseases and pose complications for screening efforts. South Korea on Monday confirmed its first case, a 35-year-old Chinese national who had travelled from Wuhan, their 4th patient reported outside of China. Last week, 2 cases were reported in Thailand and 1 in Japan. All 3 involved people from Wuhan or who recently visited the city. The report by London Imperial College's MRC Centre for Global Infectious Disease Analysis estimated that by January the 12th there were 1,700 cases in Wuhan city with the onset of related symptoms. Chinese health authorities have not commented directly on the report. The World Health Organization said on Monday an animal source appeared most likely to be the primary source of the outbreak, and that some limited human-to-human transmission occurred between close contacts. China's State Council reiterated the government will Chinese State Council has reiterated the government will step up prevention efforts and find the source of the infection and the transmission channels as soon as possible, state television said on Monday. Based on the available evidence, the current risk to the UK is very low. Dr. Nick Finn, the Deputy Director of the UK National Infection Service, said, "We are working with the WHO and with other international partners who have issued advice to the NHS and are keeping the situation under constant review." A very worrying thing when you hear of these new viruses. Suddenly an outbreak in China, and with global air transport being so fast.
Yeah.
And this holiday coming up.
Yeah.
It could spread rapidly.
And everybody remembers back to the original outbreak of the SARS back in 2002, 2003, where the majority of the visitors that were coming to Britain from Asian backgrounds were all wearing the white masks and all the rest of it. And it seemed to cause some widespread panic in Britain. Dare I say, it possibly created a wee bit of resentment in Britain as well. But this seems to be, from what I've heard, it seems to have been started, although it said animal in that report there, it seems to be solely centred around fish markets.
And Wuhan, apparently, they've managed to round it down to this one place now.
Yeah.
But they haven't proved definitely it was fish.
But in saying that, if they can narrow all the possibilities down, obviously that will help
to fight it later.
Prevent the spread. But
Okay.
the fact that it's gone from human to human now
That's the worrying
is just a
development.
wee bit of a worrying issue. Yeah.
Well, sadly, Chris, we've got to move on from this story, I'm afraid. And we're returning now to America and Donald Trump's upcoming impeachment. Now, after refusing to cooperate with the Democratic Party-led impeachment probe in the House of Representatives, Donald Trump will on Monday offer his first comprehensive defense before his trial begins in earnest in the Senate. Trump, only the fourth of 45 American presidents to face the possibility of being ousted by impeachment, has to meet a noon, that's 5 o'clock our time, deadline to submit his written defence. He is charged with abusing the powers of his office by asking Ukraine to investigate a Democratic political rival, Joe Biden, and obstructing a congressional inquiry into his conduct. This is a brazen and unlawful attempt to overturn the results of the 2016 election and interfere with the 2020 election, now just 6 months away, Trump's lawyers have argued in a 6-page initial response to the charges on Saturday. Senior administration officials said that Monday's document will offer a more detailed and aggressive defence in arguing that Trump is innocent of the charges and should not be removed from office as the Democrats are demanding. While the Republican-controlled Senate is highly unlikely to remove Trump from office, it is important for a Republican president to diminish the Democratic accusations as a partisan witch hunt. He needs to limit the political damage to his re-election bid as he seeks a second term in November. So Trump here is still trying to firefight the situation, producing a much more aggressive defence.
Yeah, well, it's now moved on from the deflection tactics that he was trying to deploy earlier on, around about Christmas, when it was all been, when Nancy Pelosi was pretty much finalising everything.
Yep.
And now it's starting to get a wee bit serious.
Well, this is the
And he
pre-trial
doesn't like
statement now being made.
And he doesn't like it because it's not his game that he's playing now.
No, and he's having to play by somebody else's rules.
Yeah, but these are set rules,
Of course.
which are laid down in the American Constitution. You can't. You can muck about with an awful lot of things in the world, but you can't muck about with your own country's constitution.
This is true.
Just for your own gain.
But at the end of the day, Chris, I
benefit.
think we all know that with the Senate being controlled primarily by his party, by the Republicans, it's very unlikely that Mr. Trump will actually be ousted by this. The question really seems to be how much damage it will do to his bid for re-election.
Yeah, but I don't think it will do that much damage.
You don't?
No, I really don't, because at the moment, America is riding along this wave of right-wing populism.
Yeah.
Which he seems to
They're talking about record levels of employment and things like this as well.
But then so is
Boris Johnson as
Boris
well.
Johnson. And that's down to the fact that they're massaging the figures.
Of course.
We've heard Trump coming out with, I'm going to do, I'm going to reinvigorate the car industry, I'm going to reinvigorate the steel industry.
And the coal industry.
What not, what have you, and all the rest of it. Exactly the same stuff that Boris Johnson is coming out with. And it is, and it is the root of it is right-wing populism.
Yeah,
That's exactly what it is.
playing to the conservative heart of America.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's leave that there. We will be returning to the story of Mr. Trump's impeachment
No doubt.
later on this week. Okay, now to our next story, if I can find it. Okay, now this is a story a little bit closer to home, and this is about the police-funded youth initiative in Howick. The police-funded youth initiative... I beg your pardon, I missed a little bit here. We have two police stories tonight. Just missed one of them, sorry about that. The first one is actually about wildlife crime, and Police Scotland has launched a new wildlife crime investigators course. The Police Scotland have announced today a new wildlife crime investigators course to enhance capability in this complex area of local policing. Wildlife crime covers a wide range of offending, from badger baiting to raptor persecution, freshwater pearl mussel theft, hare coursing and salmon poaching. Reports of wildlife crime are increasing and also include cruelty to wild animals involving things like deer and hunting with dogs. So there seems to be an increasing level of wildlife crime, and Police Scotland seem to be taking this quite seriously, Chris.
There is, because you constantly hear of reports of people who are open trapping up in the Highlands and stuff like that.
What is open trapping, Chris?
It's illegally laying trap layers down. Obviously,
are these things which will close around an animal's leg or something like that?
Yeah, and you're going after high
value,
market,
so deer, particularly
venison and
something with a high market value.
And you know, people illegally poaching grouse and pheasant. You know, I mean, Scotland's got a plethora of high market produce.
Salmon, for one.
Salmon, quail's eggs.
That's some very expensive food.
And you know, it is a highly lucrative market. So you know, we're not talking about you know, your Hamish Macbeths here. Do you know what I mean? We're actually talking about you know, folk
organised gangs of people as well.
Folk who are actually organising high level of wildlife theft.
And they're killing birds like golden eagles, which are so rare now.
That was something else again that I was going to mention. And most of these, not most of them, but I would say a high proportion of the birds and stuff like that are all sort of like coded.
Yes,
you know,
some of them are ringed so they know where they came
traced from. And all the rest of it.
And of course it's mainly happening in grouse moor areas, isn't it? Because they don't want these raptors taking the grouse.
No.
And also they're shooting hares by the hundreds. Mountain hares are disappearing from the hills.
Well, this is something else as well.
But then again, the gamekeepers have licences for doing that, even though it seems quite extreme.
But we constantly hear calls from the Greens, from the Scottish Greens, that you know, tighter security has to be brought in, you know, by the Scottish Government in order to protect these species.
The interesting thing about this is, I mean, the course is apparently 5 days long, so it's not just a one-day seminar.
No.
And the course includes investigative techniques, wildlife forensic recovery and examination, so they'll be looking at the remains of animals, inputs from selected partner agencies, including the COPFS, the Scottish Government, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, and Scottish Natural Heritage. And there's also an element on firearms legislation and ballistics. So we're even looking at how animals are shot and with what, you know.
Not even that, is that the fact that some of these firearms that the culprits are using are not actually registered. You know, and therefore illegal weaponry.
Well, Chris, we've just got time to squeeze in this last story, which I almost skipped onto by mistake, and that is police have funded a youth initiative in Howick on the Borders, aimed at encouraging youngsters aged 9 to 15 to take part in activities to support their well-being, and it's proving very popular. Launched in December, the Friday Night Borders Blue Zone scheme in Teviotdale Leisure Centre in the town provides social activities and the chance to build relationships in a fun and engaging environment. Local police officers are in attendance to provide support and information in the evenings, which are run in conjunction with the charity Live Borders and financed by the Scottish Borders Police Community Fund. The evenings, which are free, are already proving popular, and on Friday the 17th of January 123 young people attended to take part in a wide range of activities, including flume and inflatable sessions in the pool, gaming, table tennis, as well as gym sessions with an expert instructor from Live Borders team. Sergeant Paul Begley, of Howick Police Station, said it's encouraging that young people are coming along in such numbers. Building relationships is an important part of community policing work that we do in Howick. So it's very clear that this is, although it's a small scheme, it seems, in a particular town, that it is massively successful.
If it's-
123 youngsters, it's quite an achievement.
If it's as successful as what's been suggested, then hopefully other towns and cities would possibly take it over as a template. If you go back to our youth, Gordon, there used to be designated youth clubs.
Yeah, and of course,
and,
with the unified police force, the success of this programme can be rolled out in other places or
well,
copied.
yes, aye,
Whereas it might have previously just stayed in one region before.
But then, as I say, going back to our youth, there were many youth clubs, and you could take your pick, because some were, not as good as the other, and some were more robust and all the rest of it, and you knew what you could get away with in that one and all the rest of it. But it was somewhere to go.
Well,
when we look at the direction of travel that the UK government is going, by slashing funding on youth projects,
that's probably why they're having such a crime wave at the moment.
But this initiative, if it's being rolled out and it's been successful, you know what I mean?
Chris, I'm sorry, we've got to stop you there. We're just coming up to the end of the show. I've just got time to tell everybody, as usual, that we need your help to make programmes in Broadcasting Scotland. So if you want to become a supporter of Broadcasting Scotland, please follow the on-screen instructions now. That's it from us tonight. We'll see you again, or I'll see you again on Thursday night. From here, from us at 7, a very good night to you.